Hi, thanks for joining us for the Family Plot, Gardening in the Mid-South. I'm Chris Cooper. Roses are a great addition to any garden. Today we're going to go over the basics of growing them. Also, crown, scarification, and chlorosis are terms you have heard, but what do they mean? We're going to define these gardening terms and more. That's just ahead on the Family Plot, Gardening in the Mid-South.
Production funding for the Family Plot, Gardening in the Mid-South is provided by the WKNO Production Fund, the WKNO Endowment Fund, and by viewers like you. Thank you.
Welcome to the Family Plot. I'm Chris Cooper. Joining me today is Bill Dickerson. Mr. Bill is our local rose expert, and Dr. Kelly is here. Doc is our horticulture expert. Thanks for joining us.
You're welcome.
Yep.
All right, so Mr. Bill, we want to know about rose care. So let's start with pruning.
Pruning. Typically, it used to be February, January, start cutting the canes back.
Okay.
Depending on the size of the cane, 12 to 16 inches. The bigger the cane, you can take it up a little bit more. The smaller the cane, you want to cut them a little bit harder. You want to get the dead wood out, and that's a system that makes it easier. You cut the dead wood out, then you cut the little spindly stuff out, and so it kind of is a pathway to see where you're at. And then you start, and you might have a 8-foot bush, and next thing you know, you got a nub.
Okay.
But they'll come back, you know, the next year you do the same thing all over again.
Okay. All right. And I used to hear people say, yeah, you should prune them in such a way that you can actually put a bowl.
This is
Just
true.
sit a bowl in the middle of it.
And that's pretty much the biggest disease is black spot, but that opens up and you get air, and it's like any shrub. You get air through the bush, so you want it to come up, and you cut out the cross canes. So you want it open.
Okay. Makes sense.
And that just makes a big difference.
Okay. Now let's talk about the $1 million question we always get at the office. Fertilizing. I mean, what do we use to fertilize our roses with?
There's a lot of like rose tones, some companies that have a fertilizer formula. I pretty much use horse food. Cottonseed meal. You can go to your co-op or some of your box stores, your nurseries. Alfalfa pellets, and that's just an organic that builds the soil, and it's a slow release, and it's still cold. And the good thing about pruning when it's cold in February is the thorns don't eat you alive.
Oh, okay, yeah.
If the season changes and it gets hot and I'm out there instead of overalls and I'm in a t-shirt, I'm just bleeding.
Right, right.
I add Epsom salt, which is just a wonder drug in my opinion.
Okay.
I add about 2 tablespoons of Epsom salt, and then I'll add some urea or ammonium nitrate or something to kind of kick it in gear, and then scratch that in.
Okay.
And then on the fertilizing, then you'll get your blooms in May, then I'll come back and use a triple 13 or some of the organics and do those about in May. Then it gets hot and you know, they're slowing down a little bit. Then back in September, you start fall fertilizing again for that big bloom in the fall.
Okay.
So your first bloom in the season is your biggest blooms.
Okay.
Your last is your first and last is your biggest blooms. Right now when it's hot, you know, big rose will shrink down to,
sure.
They just fall apart.
Sure.
But most of and then I'd say your nurseries, go to a reputable nursery. You can get some of these box stores. You can get a little $3 rose. It's like buying a $3 car.
Okay. All right. Okay.
You know,
you get what you pay for, right?
It's exactly
Okay.
right.
All right.
And you get a good quality rose, and the nursery people can tell you what to recommend, and all of a sudden you'll have a lot better luck.
Sure.
Bloom coat and some of those things, those slow release, triple 14s, those are good. You can just throw them out and rain or water, and it gives you 3 months, and that helps.
Okay. Now let's say, since we're talking about the fertilizer, how about watering though? Because we gotta get that watered in. So how often should we be watering our roses?
Well, just about everything needs about an inch a week. Most people kill roses by too much water than not enough water.
Okay.
and you can just, I hand water mine. Most people have irrigation, but
Sure.
you know, an inch a week is enough. Okay. And they like dry feet, so if they get soggy. I dug a hole one time, was going to plant a rose, and it filled up with water. I'm like, this ain't gonna work.
Not the right site for that.
No.
Okay.
Then when you deadhead, after you prune in the spring, when you deadhead, you're just taking a rose in the house for a bouquet, and then you want to cut off that spent bloom.
Okay.
Otherwise, it forms a rose hip, and then the rose thinks it's done its job and produced, and it slows down. So if you're manipulating, so you cut those rose hips off, and then you'll get a bloom. And typically, is something I was amazed, about every 40 to 45 days, once you cut a rose back, it takes that long to get a new cane and another rose.
All right.
You know, when I first had roses, I had roses, and I look out one day and there's no roses.
Right.
And I was just kind of in between a cycle. Now you'll have some floribundas and some of those, and you'll have some, but usually they all come in at the same time and go.
Okay.
So you want to just cut back to, and you want to always leave when you're pruning or deadheading. You want to, you know, a lot of people want these long stem red roses to take in the house. Sure. Well, you've got a cane 2 foot long, and they leave it 1.5 inches. They don't leave much to work with. That rose has got to just start all over again. Okay. So you want to leave at least 2 sets of leaves. And the old rule of thumb is when you're deadheading, is cut back to a 5 leaf.
Okay, good. I'm glad you mentioned that. Okay.
At the top of the rose, you'll have a 1 and a 2. But the reason being is you're going further down the cane. You want, with a good strong bush, you want pencil thin, a pencil sized cane. Okay. If you cut up the top, it'll bloom at the top, but you get a little rose, and it's heavy, and it's piddly is what my mother used to call it. So you just do that, and then you take your bouquets in the house, you know. And
oh, that's nice. Now, while we have a little time left, let's go back and talk a little bit about black spots. So how do you get rid of black spots?
Well, there's some chemicals that you can use, and that's the biggest thing about roses. You'll get a black spot, the leaf will turn yellow, the leaf will fall off, and people will say, well, I'm not getting any blooms. Well, it doesn't have any leaves on it. Right. And that's the lifeblood of the plant. Sure. Most of your, and I was astounded when I first learned this, most of your sprays for black spot is a preventative. So once you've got black spot, you might as well just pick it off and throw it in the garbage can.
Right. Practice good sanitation. Right.
So there's some sprays that you can spray. Most of them are every week. You can get online, and there's some sprays that'll go every 2 weeks. There's some products out that work pretty good that you just spread a granular around the base, and it's got fertilizer and some pesticides. But that's the main health of a rose is good leaves, and if there's no leaves, there's no blooms. So, and you have to be diligent. So if you go on vacation, you come back and all your roses have black spot, you just got to wait to cycle out, and they'll put on new leaves, but you've just lost, you lost some valuable rose time.
Especially if you have a lot of, wind and rain.
Yeah,
it's definitely going to, spread those spores all over the place, which is why it's a good idea to mulch your roses. Don't you agree?
Oh, mulch is, whether it's your roses or it's your tomatoes, the ground's hot. When you fertilize, it's keeping it in the ground, and the ground doesn't get so hard. And it just, one, it keeps the spores from popping up on the plant. Okay. And two, it just conserves, like today, it's probably going to be 95. It just conserves moisture in the ground. Sure. So you can tell when somebody's got mulch, and some people are stingy with their mulch. If they've got a little bit on the ground and they can see it and it looks good, it's not doing any good. Right. I mean, you want 2 or 3 inches of mulch. Sure. I use hardwood mulch. A lot of people use the pine products. The only thing about hardwood mulch is you've got to break it up because it'll turn water. But the plants love it. It keeps the bugs off of them. It keeps the spores off of them, and helps with the black spot.
All right, Mr. Bill, we appreciate the information about rose care.
Well, thank you.
Thank you. There are a number of gardening events going on in the next couple of weeks. Here are just a few that might interest you. All right, Doc. I like when you do these. These are gardening terms, right, that we often hear, and some folks might not know what they actually mean.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah.
So,
and some of them kind of sound a little bit strange, and
They
they
do.
think, "Ooh, what does that mean?" Like double meanings and stuff. So.
okay. Well, you ready to get into it?
Sure.
This is always fun. All right, so here's our first gardening term. How about blight? We say
Blight.
blight, all
Yeah,
especially
blight.
dealing with tomatoes, right? We always say blight.
Oh, yeah.
So,
Got the blight.
the blight.
Oh, I got the blight. What can we do about the blight, you know? Yeah, it's a bad thing. It's definitely, I mean, you can just tell by the way people say it, blight. You know? So, yeah, it's a bad thing, and it can either be referring to a particular disease.
Okay.
We have a late blight, early blight on tomatoes, or it could just, when you use the word blight, it could refer to actually the injury on the leaf. So it could be a disease or the injury that is caused by diseases that are blights. What happens is it could be a spot, that could be the injury. It could be a lesion. It could be anything, or it could be even death. You know, blight very definitely can cause, some of the bad ones can cause eventually death of the plant. So it's a bad thing, you know, and if you've got blight, you need to do something to try to remedy the blight. And as you say, fungicides is the way to go, because most of the blights are caused by fungi, and most of our fungicides are only preventive. They're not curative. And the idea is to get it out there and get the foliage covered and the blossoms and the fruit. So it depends on exactly which blight we're trying to control, but yeah, it's a bad thing.
It's a bad thing. Fungi.
It's a bad thing,
Okay.
yeah.
Our next term is crown.
Crown, okay, well, most people would think that's what the queen's got on her head. But with gardeners, the crown of a plant is the point where the stems meet the roots. It's, in other words, right there at the soil level, that's the crown. And it's where roots turn into stems or stems turn into roots. And in a perennial, of course, it'd be fleshy, and in a tree or something else like that, it'd be woody. So it's just that junction of that transition area.
All right, so that's the crown.
That's the crown. It's not what the king or the queen wears on their head, but our crown, we used to, when we were kids, we'd crown each other. That means just bop each other in the head with your fist. I'm going to crown you.
The crown.
Yeah, I'm going to crown you. Put a knot on your head.
So here's our next gardening term, green manure.
Yeah,
That one a lot, right?
That's
Especially when
not
we're dealing
ripe
with-
manure. I mean,
Right.
it's not ripe yet, no.
Green manure. Of course, you hear
Okay.
that a lot, you know, in vegetable
You
gardens.
do, very much so. And that is a kind of an old thing that's been around a long, long time. Farmers practiced it way back, generations ago. And it was a crop that you would grow that usually was one of the legumes, which have the nitrogen fixing, you know, ability. So what it does is you grow this crop, and it can be a cover crop. You know, a lot of green manure and cover crop doesn't necessarily mean the same thing, because cover crops can be not green manures, just cover crops to prevent erosion and things like that, or to break up hard soils. But a green manure crop is grown specifically to grow and turn back into the soil for its manure or nutritive, you know, properties. And it's mainly legumes like clover,
Hairy
vetch.
vetch.
Yeah,
right.
hairy vetch. Beans, yeah, alfalfa,
Alfalfa,
exactly.
right, sure.
You know, bean crops, all of those could be used as green manure crops.
How
Yeah.
about that? So there's your green manure.
Yep.
All right, how about this gardening term? Big term, scarification.
Yeah, that's one that we hear sometimes in reference to seeds. There's scarification and there's stratification. Scarification is a way to weaken, open, or abrase a hard seed coat, because some of our seeds will not germinate because for a length of time until that seed coat degrades in some way. Now, if you're in a gardener, you can hasten that by scarification. And mainly the way we do it is mechanical. You can take a file, you can take a knife, but what you're doing is you're just scraping or abrasing that seed coat to weaken it so that moisture can get in there and it can germinate. And that's scarification. You can also do it chemically, you know, with sulfuric acid and things like that, but I wouldn't recommend that for the home gardener.
Yeah, I don't know about the home folks, right?
But I have definitely, you know, like bean
Sure.
seed is an example, canna seeds, morning glory family seeds, nasturtium, anything that's got a hard seed coat would benefit by scarification.
All right, how about this one? And I hear the old timers say this, sour versus sweet.
Yeah, you're right on it, Chris, because that is an old-timer's term. And those are terms used to describe the alkalinity or acidity of the soil, the pH, in other words, the pH.
Right.
And when I got to reading up on it, I found out that it originated when the pioneers crossed the United States going westward to determine where their best home site was. They would actually taste the soil.
How about that?
Yeah, and I hadn't tried that yet. I was going to do it. I'm like, no, I'm not even going to do that even for Chris Cooper. I'm just not going to eat dirt. But it said that you could tell the alkalinity or the acidity of a soil by the, you know, the way your taste buds reacted, and a sweet soil would be more alkaline.
Go figure.
Yeah.
How about that?
That's
Yeah,
amazing.
and it's sweet, meaning that it would, well, be sweet as opposed to sour, which would be like a fizzy. And I did read up where one guy actually did it, and he said that a really acidic soil or a sour soil would taste like those, what's that candy? Those rocks that blow up in your mouth? That little candy that's fizzy, really fizzy?
Yeah, the
So it would be
bubble?
fizzy.
Yeah. Okay, I think I know what you're talking about.
Yeah,
Little
and it
rock
said an
candies.
alkaline
Okay.
soil or a sweet soil would be like taking a dose of milk of magnesia.
Wow.
Yeah, coat chalky.
Okay.
It
okay.
kind of coats your tongue. So I'm just taking their word for it.
Ah, good deal. Okay, that was good. Okay. How about this next one? We hear this one all the time. Wet feet.
Yeah, wet
Wet
feet.
feet.
Yeah, and you mentioned that in your rose culture thing about when you dug the hole and it filled up with water. Most plants do not like what we call wet feet, and that soil, whether it's in the ground or in a container, that is continually wet and soppy, what we call soppy. I don't know if that's a real word or not, but I believe it is. But, you know,
go with it.
unless they're a bog plant or an aquatic plant, most plants do not do well with wet feet, and that's just a term we use to refer to a waterlogged soil.
Waterlogged
Yeah.
soil.
Yep.
Wet feet.
Yep,
Good stuff. We appreciate that as always. It's good stuff.
no problem.
So we're out in the garden and we're looking at this tomato plant. I think we may have possible tomato hornworm damage. As you can see here, the leaves have been eaten off. And something else you can do, you can actually look for the fecal material. And guess what? There's some right there. That lets me know a tomato hornworm is near. And there it is, the tomato hornworm. As you can see, the horn, hence the name tomato hornworm, has been doing a lot of damage here. So this is what we're gonna do. We're gonna get out the sprayer. It has BT product in it. Javelin, Dipel is what you can use. Again, the active ingredient is BT, Bacillus thuringiensis. Make sure that you spray your tomato plant, get good coverage. And what happens is the tomato hornworm is gonna eat the foliage. Once he eats the foliage, it's gonna give him a stomach ache and he's gonna die. All right, here's our Q&A session. You jump in there with us, Mr. Bill, if you have something to say, all right? Here's our first via email with a picture. I was pulling weeds around my peanut plants today and ran across several of these green caterpillars in the soil. What are they and what should I do about them? And this is our friend, Mr. Mike in Ringo, Georgia. All right, Mr. Mike, alfalfa caterpillar is what that is, right? Because they actually hang around, they hang around soybean.
They do?
And when he mentioned,
Peanut.
of course, peanuts, I was like, aha.
That's a legume.
Okay. It's a legume.
Yeah,
Right.
soybeans is a legume, and this thing feeds on legumes.
Feeds on
Yeah.
legumes, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, so alfalfa caterpillar. But here's the deal. Can cause major damage to alfalfa because this caterpillar, instead of just eating chunks out of the leaf, it can eat the entire leaf. Now, if you want to get rid of it, it's a caterpillar.
BT.
BT.
Yeah.
BT. So
Yeah.
Dipel, Javelin.
Right.
You know,
Thurside if it's still out
Thurside,
there.
right?
Yeah.
If it's still there. Use that, Mr. Mike. That'll kill your problem. But
Right.
you know what? Beautiful butterfly. I think it's like, I saw a picture of it. It's like yellow, purple,
Really?
and white. It's the alfalfa butterfly.
Okay.
All right.
I didn't see that. But yeah, I kind of thought it was either that or something else, and I wasn't sure. So you got that one.
Yeah, it's the peanut,
It's
plant
a
kind of gave it
peanut
away. And I'm thinking
caterpillar.
about soybean. So there you have it, Mr.
Yeah.
Mike. Thanks for that question. All right, here's our next via email. Can you help me by identifying this type of grass? It's taking over my football field. How do I get rid of it? And this is Mr. Craig. He's the football coach of Middleton High School.
Uh-oh.
How about that?
It's a
You know something
serious
about
thing
Middleton?
then, yeah.
He's the football coach. So what kind of grass do we think that is?
I thought it was crabgrass. but I don't know. I'm not a turf expert, a weed expert, but it looked kind of like crabgrass.
Crabgrass it is.
Okay.
Crabgrass, of course, grows in clumps.
It does.
Or bunches, as some
Kind of
folks will
spreads
say.
out, looks like a little crab with its, yeah.
Right, yeah.
Yeah.
Right, kind of looks like that a little bit. Compact soils.
Oh, that's football, definitely.
Right,
yeah.
that's football, right?
I play football on that field, by the way.
So that would be crabgrass, okay? Again, compact soils that actually hold a lot of moisture is what crabgrass likes. Now, I usually start culturally, okay? So I usually tell folks, you got to fertilize according to your soil tests. You know how this goes, Doc, okay? Make sure you're cutting or mowing at the right height, okay?
Right. Yeah.
Aeration is important, okay? Watering deeply, but infrequently. Those are your cultural practices. Now, with that being said and done, how do you get rid of it chemically? Is probably what he wants to know, right?
Right. There's a couple of ways, right?
So there's a couple of ways. Do you know a couple of those ways?
Well, I think there's pre-merge you can use, and then there's post-emergent herbicides. Pre-merge would be to get it before it germinates in the spring, and there's chemicals that do that, that do that. And then there's the post-emergent, which, and I believe I'm sure it's a Bermuda turf, right? Would you suspect?
Probably, yeah.
So there are herbicides you could spray over Bermuda that will target crabgrass.
Right.
So, he would just need to check and talk to a reputable dealer or the Extension Service, county office.
Right. Down in Hardeman County.
Yeah, and they can lead him in the right direction with that.
Yeah, pre-emerge is very important. It needs to go down late February, early March.
So he's missed that time.
So
he can hit it next February, though.
Right. Dimension is something that we recommend. Pendulum is something that's recommended as well. The commercial guys use Barricade, which is prodiamine.
Yeah.
But, post-emerge would be quinclorac.
That's right. I didn't know how.
Quinclorac.
That's exactly right.
Yep. But, Mr. Kress, since you're a football coach, maybe, somebody can help you, get the post-emerge that you would need in bulk supply.
Exactly.
Right.
And football season's 6 weeks away, so
yeah,
he needs
so you got to hurry up.
Yeah.
Yeah. So there you have it, Mr. Craig. We appreciate that question. Good luck to the team. All right.
Go Tigers.
Here's our next via email. I bought several small pots of chrysanthemums. They are supposed to bloom in the fall. My chrysanthemums started blooming in April.
Yeah.
Is this because of the weird weather? And this is from Miss Ruth. So they're supposed to bloom in the fall. But they came up in April.
You think that, don't you?
You
always typically think of mums as the fall blooming plant. But with humans, we don't let stuff alone. So some of the new, and see, for a plant to bloom in the fall, that's a condition we call a photoperiodic plant, which means that flowering is based on daylight hours, or more particularly night hours, but short days. In the fall, our days get shorter, right?
Right.
So that triggers a lot of our plants to say, okay, fellas, it's short days, we got to bloom. We got to do our stuff before it gets cold weather. So a mum, in its natural way, was a short day plant and bloomed in the fall. But the floral industry got a hold of them. And now they've come out with what we call day neutral. In other words, they bloom no matter what.
Oh my goodness.
And they'll bloom in the spring, they'll bloom in the summer, and they'll bloom in the fall. And some of them will just go in and out of bloom all the time. But I suspect what happened to hers is they were grown obviously in a greenhouse, okay? Subjected to short days probably in that greenhouse, which triggered them to flower, because when they get their number of hours, below a certain day length or night length, they're going to flower no matter what.
How about that?
So she brought them out like a poinsettia.
Okay, okay.
They brought them out and okay, we're going to flower. So tell her not to worry about it. They'll just get back right next summer.
Or get new ones. I planted some at church one fall, for Halloween, and the next, they did okay. And the next spring, they just greened up and they bloom in the spring, and they were. I couldn't dig them up, and they're huge now.
Yeah, and that's fine. Right. Just she can enjoy them in the spring, and they may bloom again. Or if she doesn't like them blooming in the spring, she always pinch some buds off.
Right. Yeah. Just pinch the buds off, and it'll be fine.
Just keep pinching them.
Right.
But quit pinching them like by now, because if she keeps pinching them on into August, she's gonna pinch off her flower buds.
It's too late at that point.
Yeah.
All right. So there you have it, Miss Ruth. Okay. Not too much of the weird weather. Just day neutral.
Yeah, could be one of those that is, yeah.
New word.
All right, yeah. New garden term there.
Day neutral and settle in.
So don't put that on your term list. We've already defined that one, yeah.
All right, Mr. Bill, Dr. Kelly, we're out of time. It's been fun. Remember, we love to hear from you. Send us an email or letter. The email address is familyplot@wkno.org, and the mailing address is Family Plot, 7151 Cherry Farms Road, Cordova, Tennessee 38016. Or you can go online to familyplotgarden.com. That's all we have time for today. Every week we don't get to answer all the viewer questions on TV, but we do answer them and post them online at familyplotgarden.com. The questions we did not answer are at the bottom of the home page. Thanks for watching. I'm Chris Cooper. Be sure to join us next week for the Family Plot, Gardening in the Mid-South. Be safe.